Dr. Elena Vasquez had always dreamed of meeting life from another world, but not like this. The coffee in her hand grew cold as she stared at the massive screens. In the International Space Research Facility, 12 enormous ships hung in the sky above major cities around the globe. Each one was the size of a small island, casting shadows that stretched for miles. "This can't be happening," whispered her colleague David from the next desk. His face was pale as he watched the news feeds. People were running through the streets of New York, London, and Tokyo, cars abandoned on highways, children crying in their parents' arms. Elena set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. As the facility's lead expert on possible alien life, she had spent years studying signals from space and preparing for this moment. But seeing it happen was completely different from imagining it. "Dr. Vasquez, report to Command Center immediately," came the announcement over the facility's speakers. Elena's heart pounded as she walked through the corridors. Other scientists and staff members were gathered in small groups, their voices hushed and worried. The command center buzzed with activity. General Morrison, the facility's military director, stood before a wall of monitors showing the alien ships from every angle. "Elena, thank goodness you're here," he said, turning to face her. "We need your expertise now more than ever." "What do we know about them?" Elena asked, trying to keep her voice steady despite the fear creeping up her spine. "They're not attacking," Morrison replied, which surprised her. "They've been hanging there for 3 hours, completely silent. No weapons firing, no movement toward populated areas. It's like they're waiting for something." Elena studied the images of the ships. They were beautiful in a strange way, with smooth curves and a metallic surface that seemed to shimmer like water. "Have we tried communicating with them every frequency we know?" "Nothing. That's where you come in. If anyone can figure out how to talk to them, it's you." Elena nodded and moved to her workstation. She had developed several theoretical communication protocols for exactly this situation. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she began broadcasting mathematical sequences, prime numbers, and basic scientific constants on multiple frequencies for an hour. Nothing happened. Then, just as Elena was about to try a different approach, one of the monitors flickered. Symbols appeared on the screen, unlike any writing system she had ever seen. They seemed to flow and shift like living things. "We've got something," Elena called out, her excitement overriding her fear. The symbols continued to appear, forming patterns that gradually became more familiar. Soon, she realized they were mathematical responses to her signals. "They're answering," she whispered in amazement. "They understand what we're sending them." Over the next 2 hours, Elena managed to establish a basic communication system with the aliens. They seemed incredibly intelligent, quickly grasping the concepts she was sharing and responding with increasingly complex ideas. Finally, a message came through that made everyone in the command center hold their breath. The symbols, translated to simple words: "We request meeting. Peaceful. Need help. They want to meet with us," Elena announced to the room. "And they're asking for help, not trying to hurt us." General Morrison frowned. "Could be a trick." "I don't think so," Elena replied, studying the alien messages. "Their communication style shows genuine cooperation. If they wanted to harm us, they would have done it already. Look at the size of those ships." After much debate, the world's leaders agreed to a meeting. Elena was chosen as the primary human representative because of her successful communication with the aliens. The meeting would take place at a neutral location in the Swiss Alps, far from major population centers. 3 days later, Elena stood in a specially prepared conference room, her heart racing as she waited. Through the large windows, she could see one of the alien ships descending slowly toward the landing pad outside. It was smaller than the massive vessels hovering over the cities, but still impressive. The ship landed with barely a sound. A ramp extended from its side, and Elena held her breath as figures began to emerge. The first alien to step out was clearly their leader. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, with broad shoulders and a commanding presence that was impossible to ignore. His skin had a unique silver-blue color that seemed to catch the light beautifully. He wore what appeared to be a military uniform, dark and practical, but somehow elegant. His face was surprisingly expressive, with features that were different from humans but not frightening. Behind him came several other aliens, all dressed similarly but clearly following his lead. Elena noticed that they moved with military precision, like well-trained soldiers. The leader stepped forward and, to Elena's amazement, spoke in perfect English. "I am General Zephyr of the Alterian Empire. You are Dr. Elena Vasquez, the one who spoke to us through the transmissions." "Yes," Elena replied, finding her voice. "Welcome to Earth, General Zephyr. Though I have to admit, we're all a bit nervous about why you're here." Something changed in the general's expression when she spoke. His formal military bearing seemed to soften slightly, and he looked at her with what seemed like genuine interest rather than just diplomatic politeness. "We understand your fear," General Zephyr said, his voice deep but surprisingly gentle. "We did not come to conquer or harm your world. We came because we have nowhere else to go." Elena felt her scientific curiosity overcoming her nervousness. "What happened to your home?" General Zephyr's expression darkened. "Our planet, Alteria, was destroyed by creatures we call the Devourers. They consume everything in their path, leaving nothing but empty space behind. We barely escaped with our fleet and the survivors of our people. You're refugees," Elena realized, and she saw relief in the general's eyes that she understood. "Yes, we seek temporary sanctuary while we search for a new world to call home. We have technology and knowledge we can share in exchange for shelter. We do not wish to burden your people." Elena was about to respond when shouting erupted outside the building. Through the windows, she could see a crowd of protesters pushing against the security barriers. They carried signs demanding that the aliens leave Earth. "Immediately, alien invaders go home," someone shouted through a megaphone. "Earth for humans only." General Zephyr's soldiers immediately moved into defensive positions, but he raised a hand to stop them. "We expected this reaction," he said calmly to Elena. "Fear is a natural response to the unknown." Elena felt embarrassed by her own species' reaction. "Not all humans feel this way," she said quickly. "Many of us are fascinated by the possibility of learning from you again." That softening in the general's expression when she spoke. "You are different from the others," he observed. "You show curiosity instead of fear." Before Elena could reply, the situation outside escalated dramatically. The protesters had broken through the barriers and were rushing toward the building. Security guards tried to stop them, but they were outnumbered. "We need to get you to safety," Elena said to General Zephyr, but he shook his head. "My people do not run from conflict." He replied, "But you should seek shelter, Dr. Vasquez." Elena was about to argue when the conference room door burst open. A group of angry protesters pushed inside, led by a man with wild eyes and clenched fists. "Get these monsters off our planet," the leader shouted. "They'll destroy us all just like in the movies." General Zephyr stepped forward, placing himself between Elena and the protesters. "We mean no harm," he said firmly. "We are here for peaceful discussions only." "Peaceful?" The protester laughed harshly. "Right? Until you start taking over our cities and enslaving our people." The situation was getting dangerous. Elena could see that some of the protesters were carrying weapons. She stepped forward, trying to position herself where she could help calm things down. "Please, everyone listen," she called out. "These beings are not invaders. They're asking for help, just like any refugee would. You're a traitor to your own species." Someone yelled at her. That's when everything went wrong. One of the protesters threw something heavy at General Zephyr. Elena, without thinking, moved to shield him and felt sharp pain as the object struck her shoulder. She stumbled and fell, blood beginning to stain her shirt. The reaction from General Zephyr was immediate and intense. His eyes seemed to glow with an inner fire, and he moved faster than Elena thought possible. In one fluid motion, he caught her as she fell and turned to face the protesters. "No one harms her while I draw breath," he declared, his voice carrying a power that made everyone in the room freeze. The air itself seemed to vibrate with his anger. His soldiers moved forward, but their weapons remained lowered. It was clear that General Zephyr's presence alone was enough to control the situation. The protesters, suddenly faced with the reality of a clearly powerful alien protecting the woman they had just injured, began backing toward the door. Elena looked up at General Zephyr, surprised by the gentleness with which he held her despite the fierce expression on his face. "I'm okay," she whispered. "It's just a cut." But something had changed in that moment. Elena could see it in the general's eyes as he looked down at her. Whatever diplomatic distance had existed between them was gone, replaced by something much more personal and intense. "You protected me," he said quietly, as if he couldn't quite believe it. 3 months had passed since that first meeting, and Elena's life had changed completely. Every morning, she woke up in her small apartment near the research facility and drove to work knowing she would spend her day with beings from another world. What started as fear had grown into fascination, and something even deeper that she was afraid to name. The Alterian settlement negotiations were going better than anyone had expected. General Zephyr had proven to be not just a military leader, but also a skilled diplomat who genuinely cared about finding a solution that worked for both species. Elena had become the primary human liaison, spending hours each day working directly with him to establish protocols for peaceful coexistence. "Your people are more adaptable than mine expected," General Zephyr said during one of their afternoon meetings. They were sitting in the conference room that had become their regular workspace. Documents and holographic displays scattered across the table between them. Elena smiled as she organized the latest housing proposals. "Humans can be surprising when we're not scared, though I have to admit, some of us are still pretty nervous about the whole situation." "And what about you, Dr. Vasquez? Are you still nervous?" Elena looked up to find General Zephyr watching her with those intense eyes of his. Over the past months, she had learned to read his expressions better. Right now, he seemed genuinely curious about her answer. "Not nervous exactly," she said carefully. "More like aware that everything is different now. My whole understanding of the universe has changed." "Mine as well," he said quietly, and something in his tone made Elena's heart skip a beat. Their working relationship had become comfortable, even friendly. Elena had learned about Alterian culture, their advanced technology, and their deep connection to what they called the cosmic flow. General Zephyr had learned about human customs, emotions, and the strange way people on Earth could form bonds that lasted lifetimes. But lately, Elena had been experiencing something she couldn't explain. She was having vivid dreams filled with memories that weren't her own. She saw scenes of a beautiful planet with purple skies and silver trees. She felt the terror of watching that world burn as dark creatures devoured everything in sight. She experienced the grief of leading survivors away from the only home they had ever known. These weren't her memories, but they felt completely real. Elena was starting to suspect they belonged to General Zephyr. "General," she said hesitantly, "can I ask you something personal about your people?" "Of course. What would you like to know?" Elena set down her pen and looked directly at him. "Do Alterians ever share dreams or memories with other people?" General Zephyr went very still. For a long moment, he said nothing, and Elena wondered if she had crossed some cultural boundary. "Why do you ask?" he finally said, his voice carefully neutral. "Because I've been having dreams about your home world, about the attack, about things I've never seen before, but that feel completely real." General Zephyr closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, Elena saw something that looked like both relief and concern. "What I'm about to tell you," he said slowly, "will sound impossible by your world's understanding of relationships. Try me. I've gotten used to impossible things lately." General Zephyr stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the mountains in the distance. "My people have the ability to form what we call soul bonds. These connections happen rarely, and they cannot be forced or controlled. When two compatible spirits meet, regardless of species or background, they begin to share thoughts, emotions, and memories." Elena felt her heart racing. "And you think that's what's happening to us?" He turned to face her, and she could see vulnerability in his expression that she had never seen before. "I know it is. The bond began forming the day we met, when you protected me from those protesters. It has been growing stronger every day we work together. Is that why you seem different when you talk to me than when you're with other humans? Yes? The bond makes it difficult to maintain emotional distance. With you, I am not just General Zephyr of the Alterian fleet. I am simply myself. Elena stood up and walked over to where he stood by the window. Is this normal for your people? Bonding with someone from another species. It has never happened before in our recorded history. You are the first human I have ever met, and somehow, you are the perfect match for my soul. The weight of his words settled over Elena like a warm blanket. Everything made sense now. The way she felt completely comfortable with him despite knowing him for such a short time. The dreams. The strange feeling that she had been waiting her whole life to meet him without knowing it. What does this mean for us? She asked quietly. Before General Zephyr could answer, the conference room door burst open. Commander Kix, one of General Zephyr's senior officers, strode into the room with several other Alterian soldiers behind him. General, we need to speak with you immediately, Commander Kix said, his tone sharp and urgent, his eyes flicked to Elena with obvious disapproval. Privately, Dr. Vasquez is my trusted liaison. General Zephyr replied calmly. Anything you need to discuss can be said in front of her. Commander Kix's expression hardened. That is exactly what we need to discuss. Your attachment to this human is compromising your judgment and putting our entire mission at risk. Elena felt the temperature in the room seem to drop. General Zephyr's posture shifted into something more military and dangerous. Explain yourself, Commander. The crew is talking, General. They see how you look at the human. They know you spend more time with her than necessary. Some are beginning to question whether you can make decisions that prioritize our people's survival over your personal feelings. Elena wanted to disappear. She had never intended to cause problems within the Alterian command structure. My personal relationships do not affect my leadership abilities, General Zephyr said, his voice deadly quiet. Don't they? Commander Kix stepped closer, his own voice rising. Yesterday you approved housing locations that benefit human communities more than our people. Last week you agreed to technology sharing terms that give Earth's governments access to systems they haven't earned. You're making choices based on what will make the humans happy, not what's best for us. I'm making choices based on building a sustainable future for both our species, General Zephyr replied. Something you seem incapable of understanding. And I am trying to ensure our species has a future at all. Commander Kix shot back. We cannot afford to have our leader distracted by romantic feelings for an alien. The word alien hung in the air like an insult. Elena felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and hurt. You will not speak of Dr. Vasquez in that tone, General Zephyr said, stepping protectively in front of Elena. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Commander Kix gestured angrily. You're more concerned with defending her feelings than addressing the legitimate concerns of your own people. Elena is not just any human, General Zephyr said, and Elena's heart jumped at hearing him use her first name in front of his officers. She has worked tirelessly to ensure our people are treated fairly. She has shown more loyalty to our cause than some of my own soldiers. Commander Kix's eyes narrowed dangerously. Loyalty or manipulation? How do we know she isn't using her feelings to influence our negotiations in humanity's favor? That was too much for Elena. She stepped around General Zephyr to face Commander Kix directly. I would never manipulate anyone, especially not Zephyr, she said firmly. Everything I've done has been to help both our peoples find a way to coexist peacefully. Convenient words, Commander Kix replied coldly, but actions speak louder. You've inserted yourself into every aspect of our operations. You have access to our technology, our plans, our weaknesses. For all we know, you're reporting everything back to your government's military leaders. Elena felt like she had been slapped. That's completely untrue, and you know it. Do I? Prove it. Submit to a telepathic scan so we can verify your true intentions. Elena looked at General Zephyr, confused. What's a telepathic scan? An invasive mental procedure that would allow us to read your thoughts and memories, General Zephyr explained, his voice tight with anger. And completely unnecessary. It's the only way to be sure, Commander Kix insisted. Unless, of course, she has something to hide. General Zephyr moved so fast that Elena barely saw him. One moment he was standing beside her, the next he had. Commander Kix pressed against the wall with his hand around the other Alterian's throat. "No one touches her mind," General Zephyr said, his voice carrying a power that made the windows vibrate. "No one subjects her to procedures she doesn't understand. And no one questions her loyalty in my presence again." The other Alterian soldiers in the room looked shocked by their general's display of protective fury. "She will not be scanned, tested, or threatened," General Zephyr continued, his grip tightening. "This I swear by the light of our dying sun, Commander." Kix managed to speak despite the pressure on his throat, and this proves my point perfectly. You're willing to attack your own people to protect one human. How is that acceptable leadership? General Zephyr released him, but didn't step back. "Elena is under my personal protection. Anyone who threatens her threatens me directly." Commander Kix straightened his uniform and looked around the room at the other soldiers. "You all." 2 weeks after the confrontation with Commander Kix, Elena noticed that something was wrong. The Alterian soldiers who used to nod respectfully when she passed now avoided eye contact. The daily briefings felt tense, with long silences and careful words. Even General Zephyr seemed distracted during their meetings, constantly checking his communication device for messages from his fleet. Elena tried to focus on her work, but the uncomfortable feeling in her stomach wouldn't go away. She was reviewing settlement construction plans when Dr. Harrison, her direct supervisor at the research facility, knocked on her office door. "Elena, do you have a moment? I need to discuss something important with you." Dr. Harrison was a kind man in his 60s who had always been supportive of Elena's work. But today, his expression was serious and somewhat sad. "Of course," Elena said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "What's on your mind?" Dr. Harrison sat down and pulled out a folder. "I've been asked to speak with you about your assignment here. There are some concerns about your close working relationship with General Zephyr." Elena felt her heart sink. What kind of concerns? The kind where government officials start asking questions about whether our lead liaison might be too emotionally involved to make objective decisions. Dr. Harrison opened the folder and showed her several official-looking documents. "There's talk that your personal feelings for the general could compromise the negotiations." "That's ridiculous," Elena said, but even as she spoke, she wondered if there was some truth to it. Her feelings for Zephyr had grown strong every day, and maybe that was affecting her judgment. "I don't think it's ridiculous," Dr. Harrison said gently. "I think you care about him, and that's natural. He's an impressive individual. But Elena, we're negotiating the future relationship between two entire species. We can't afford to have our representatives making decisions based on personal emotions." Elena stared at the documents, trying to process what was happening. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that you're being reassigned. Effective immediately, you'll be transferred to our research station in Antarctica. There's important work being done there on Alterian technology that could benefit from your expertise." Antarctica. Elena stood up so quickly that her chair rolled backward. "That's on the other side of the world. I can't leave now. Not when the negotiations are at such a critical stage. The negotiations will continue without you. Dr. Peterson will take over as primary liaison." Elena felt panic rising in her chest. "Dr. Peterson doesn't understand Alterian culture the way I do. He doesn't have the communication protocols I developed. This could set back the entire process by months, or it could help us make more rational decisions without emotional complications." Dr. Harrison replied, "Elena, I know this is difficult, but it's what's best for everyone involved. Does General Zephyr know about this?" Dr. Harrison hesitated before answering. "The general has been informed that you requested the transfer yourself. He's been told that you felt the personal nature of your relationship was interfering with your professional duties." Elena felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. "I never requested any transfer, and I would never say something like that about Zephyr. Elena, please try to understand. This decision comes from the highest levels of government. There are people who believe your relationship with General Zephyr poses a security risk to both species, a security risk. That's insane. Zephyr and I have worked together to build trust. Between our peoples, we've prevented conflicts and found solutions that benefit everyone. Dr. Harrison stood up and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. I know you believe that, and maybe it's true, but perception matters in politics. The appearance of favoritism or compromise can be just as damaging as the real thing. Elena pulled away from his touch. I won't go. I won't leave him thinking. Then I abandoned him for my career. You don't have a choice in this matter. Your transport to Antarctica leaves in 6 hours. I suggest you use that time to pack and say whatever goodbyes you feel are necessary. After Dr. Harrison left, Elena sat alone in her office, staring at the wall. Everything she had worked for, everything she had built with Zephyr, was being torn away from her. And worse, he was being told that she had chosen to leave. She grabbed her phone and tried to call the Alterian Command Center, but her access codes had already been revoked. She tried to reach Zephyr through the emergency communication channel they had established, but that was blocked too. Elena realized with growing horror that this wasn't just a simple reassignment. Someone had planned this carefully, cutting off all her connections to Zephyr before telling her about the transfer. They wanted to make sure she couldn't explain the truth to him. As she packed her belongings, Elena's mind raced through possibilities. Who would benefit from separating her? And Zephyr, obviously Commander Kix, who had made his disapproval clear. But he couldn't arrange for her reassignment without human cooperation. Then she remembered something Dr. Harrison had said about government officials asking questions. What if Commander Kix had approached human authorities with his concerns? What if he had convinced them that Elena was a security risk? The more she thought about it, the more sense it made. Commander Kix gets rid of the human he sees as a threat to Alterian interests, while human officials get rid of the liaison they think is too emotionally compromised. Everyone wins except Elena and Zephyr. 6 hours later, Elena was on a military transport plane heading south as the research facility disappeared below the clouds. She pressed her face to the small window and wondered if she would ever see Zephyr again. Meanwhile, back at the facility, General Zephyr was struggling with his own emotional turmoil. When Commander Kix had delivered the news about Elena's transfer request, Zephyr's first instinct had been disbelief. Elena would never abandon their work together, would never abandon him. But the official documents seemed genuine, and Elena herself was nowhere to be found. Her office was empty, her personal belongings gone. When Zephyr demanded to speak with her directly, he was told that she had specifically requested no contact during her transition to the new assignment. Perhaps it is for the best, Commander Kix said during their morning briefing. The human clearly realized that her emotions were interfering with her duties. At least she had the wisdom to remove herself from the situation, General Zephyr said. Nothing, but inside, he felt like his heart was being torn apart. The soul bond that had been growing strong every day was now a source of constant pain. He could feel Elena's distress even across the distance, but he couldn't understand why she had left him. Days passed, and Zephyr's emotional state began affecting his leadership in ways he hadn't expected. The psychic connection that allowed him to coordinate with his fleet was disrupted by his inner turmoil. Ships reported navigation errors and communication failures that seemed to have no technical cause. Dr. Peterson, Elena's replacement, was competent but lacked her intuitive understanding of Alterian culture. Negotiations that had been progressing smoothly suddenly hit roadblocks over issues that Elena would have resolved in minutes. General, the human settlements are rejecting our latest proposals, Commander Kix reported during a briefing. They claim our territorial requirements are too aggressive. Then we negotiate, Zephyr replied. But his heart wasn't in it. Everything felt meaningless without Elena there to share the small victories and help solve the problems. Or, Commander Kix said carefully, we could simply take what we need. Our ships are more than capable of enforcing reasonable demands, General. Zephyr looked at his second-in-command with surprise. We came here seeking sanctuary, not to conquer. We came here to ensure our people's survival. If the humans won't cooperate willingly, perhaps they need stronger motivation. The suggestion troubled Zephyr deeply, but he was finding it harder and harder to care about diplomatic niceties when every day felt like a struggle just to function. Thousands of miles away in Antarctica, Elena was making a discovery that would change everything. While reviewing confiscated Alterian communication logs as part of her new assignment, she found messages that had been intercepted and hidden from her during the past weeks. The messages were from Zephyr, sent during the time when she thought he had been avoiding her. In them, he expressed confusion about her sudden emotional distance and requested private meetings to discuss their relationship. The final message, sent just hours before her transfer, was heartbreaking in its vulnerability. Elena, I did not understand what has changed between us, but I feel your pain through our bond. Whatever I have done to cause you distress, please allow me to make amends. You are more important to me than my command, more precious than my own life. Do not let others convince you that what we have is wrong. Elena stared at the message with tears streaming down her face. Zephyr hadn't known about her reassignment when he sent this. He thought she was pulling away from him emotionally, not that she was being physically removed from his life. She immediately tried to send a response, but her communication access was restricted to official channels only. Any attempt to contact the Alterian fleet would be blocked and reported to her supervisors. Elena realized that she was essentially a prisoner in the Antarctic facility, cut off from the outside world while Zephyrus. Elena had been planning her escape from the Antarctic Research Station for 3 days. When the alarm started screaming, she was in her small quarters, studying the facility's layout and trying to figure out how to reach the communications center. When red lights began flashing throughout the building, all personnel report to the main briefing room immediately. Came the announcement over the speakers. Elena's heart raced as she joined the stream of confused scientists and technicians heading down the corridor. Dr. Roberts, the station commander, stood at the front of the room with a grim expression. Behind him, massive screens showed images that made Elena's blood run cold. Dark, twisted ships were emerging from hyperspace around Earth's outer atmosphere. They looked like mechanical insects, all sharp angles and hungry curves. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Roberts announced, we have a situation. Approximately 30 minutes ago, an unknown alien fleet appeared in our solar system. These are not the Alterians we've been working with. These ships are different, and they appear to be hostile. Elena felt sick to her stomach. The Devourers had arrived just as she had feared after reading those intercepted communications. She watched the screens as the insect-like ships moved with predatory grace toward Earth. What about the Alterian fleet? Someone called out. Surely they can help defend us. Dr. Roberts shook his head. Initial reports suggest the Alterian ships are experiencing technical difficulties. Multiple vessels have gone offline, and their coordination appears to be severely compromised. Elena knew exactly why the Alterian fleet wasn't functioning properly. Without her connection to General Zephyr, his emotional state was affecting the psychic network that allowed the fleet to operate as a unified force. The timing couldn't have been worse. We're being evacuated to secure facilities, Dr. Roberts continued. Transport aircraft are already en route to collect all personnel. Elena realized this was her chance. In the chaos of an evacuation, she might be able to slip away and find a way to reach General Zephyr. She had to warn him about what she had learned and help restore their bond before it was too late. As the staff scattered to pack their essential belongings, Elena made her move. Instead of heading to her quarters, she slipped away toward the communications center. The security guards were busy with evacuation procedures, and most of the technical staff had already left their posts. Elena managed to access one of the communication terminals and sent an urgent message to the Alterian fleet. She didn't know if it would get through, but she had to try. General Zephyr, this is Elena. I never requested a transfer. I was forced to leave and told you had been informed I chose to go. The Devourers are here because of information I found. In intercepted communications, your fleet is compromised because our bond is damaged. Please, if you receive this, know that I never abandoned you. Before she could send more, Elena heard footsteps in the corridor. She quickly deleted her message log and pretended to be checking evacuation schedules. When a security guard found her, Dr. Vasquez, You need to be at the landing pad in 10 minutes. The transport is arriving soon. Elena nodded and followed the guard, but her mind was racing. She had to find another way to reach Zephyr, and fast. The evacuation transport was a large military aircraft that would take them to a secure facility in South America. As Elena boarded with the other personnel, she noticed that communication equipment was scattered throughout the passenger area. If she could access it during the flight, she might be able to establish contact with the Alterian fleet. 3 hours into the flight, Elena's opportunity came. Most of the passengers were sleeping or focused on their personal devices, and the crew was busy in the cockpit dealing with reports from the battle zone. Elena quietly made her way to the communication station at the back of the aircraft. What she saw on the emergency channels made her heart stop. The battle was going terribly wrong. Devourer ships were overwhelming Earth's defenses, and the Alterian fleet was scattered and uncoordinated. Several Alterian vessels had already been destroyed, and more were falling every minute. Elena frantically tried to establish contact with General Zephyr's command ship, but the communication channels were flooded with emergency traffic. Finally, after nearly an hour of attempts, she managed to get through. General Zephyr, please respond. This is Elena Vasquez. There was a long pause. Then a voice she didn't recognize came through the speaker. Dr. Vasquez, this is Commander Torres of the Alterian Defense Corps. General Zephyr is not available to speak with you. What do you mean he's not available? Is he injured? Another pause. The general is being held in detention by order of Commander Kix. He has been declared unfit for command due to emotional instability. Elena felt like she had been punched in the stomach. Commander Kix arrested him. Commander Kix assumed command when the general's condition began affecting fleet operations. The general has been confined for the safety of the mission. Elena realized with growing horror what had happened. Commander Kix had used Zephyr's emotional distress over their separation as an excuse to take control of the fleet. With Zephyr imprisoned, there was no hope of restoring the psychic network that coordinated the Alterian ships. I need to speak with Commander Kix immediately, Elena said. I'm sorry, but the commander is not accepting communications from human personnel. At this time, Elena wanted to scream with frustration. Everything was falling apart, and the people who could fix the situation were being kept apart by others who didn't understand what was really happening. She was about to try a different approach when the aircraft suddenly shook violently. Emergency. Lights began flashing, and the pilot's voice came over the intercom. All passengers, prepare for emergency landing. We have Devourer ships closing on our position. Elena looked out the window and saw 3 of the insect-like ships pursuing their transport. The aircraft was fast, but the alien vessels were faster. Within minutes, they would be caught. The transport began evasive maneuvers, diving toward the mountains below. Elena was thrown against the wall as the aircraft twisted and turned, trying to avoid the energy blasts from the pursuing ships. We're not going to make it, she heard one of the crew members say over the radio. That's when Elena made a decision that would change everything. She grabbed the emergency communication device and began broadcasting on all frequencies. General Zephyr, if you can hear this, I'm about to be captured or killed by the Devourers. I want you to know that I never stopped loving you. Our bond is real, and it's the key to saving both our peoples. Don't let them convince you that what we have is weakness. It's the strongest thing in the universe. The transport aircraft crash-landed in a mountain valley, sliding across rocky ground before coming to a stop. Elena was bruised and shaken, but alive. Brown her. Other passengers were climbing out of their seats, checking for injuries, but their relief was short-lived. The Devourer ships landed nearby, and dark figures began emerging from them. Elena had never seen the creatures up close before, and the sight made her skin crawl. They looked like a twisted combination of insect and machine, with multiple arms, ending in sharp claws and eyes that glowed with hungry malevolence. The Devourers moved through the crash site, capturing survivors with efficient brutality. Elena tried to run, but one of the creatures caught her within seconds. Its claws were surprisingly gentle as it lifted her, but she could feel the malevolent intelligence behind its glowing eyes. As she was carried toward one of the alien ships, Elena saw other transports being attacked across the valley. The Devourers weren't just destroying everything in their path, they were capturing humans alive. Elena was brought aboard the Devourer ship and placed in some kind of holding cell. With other human prisoners, the walls seemed to pulse with organic energy, and she could hear strange whispers that seemed to come from the ship itself. "What do they want with us?" asked Dr. Peterson, who had been on another transport. Elena looked around the cell and realized something chilling. "They're not just trying to destroy us," she said quietly. "They're studying us, learning about us." Hours passed in the darkness of the alien ship. Elena could feel the vessel moving, probably heading toward the main battle zone where the fate of Earth and the Alterian survivors would be decided. She closed her eyes and tried to reach out through the bond she shared with General Zephyr. Even across the distance and through whatever interference the Devourer ship was creating, she could feel him. He was in pain, not physical but emotional. And she could sense his frustration at being imprisoned while his people fought and died. Elena focused all her energy on sending him one message through their connection. "I'm alive. I'm coming back to you. Hold on." Somewhere in the depths of an Alterian command ship, General Zephyr sat in his detention cell and suddenly felt a warmth he hadn't experienced in weeks. Elena was alive, and she was trying to reach him for the first time since their separation. Zephyr allowed himself to hope that they might have a chance to save both their species after all. But first, they would have to survive what was coming next. Elena had been a prisoner on the Devourer ship for 6 hours when everything changed. She was sitting in the organic cell with the other captured humans, trying to stay calm despite the terrifying whispers that seemed to come from the ship's walls. When suddenly the vessel shuddered violently. "What was that?" Dr. Peterson whispered, looking around nervously. Eleanor pressed her ear to the wall and could hear sounds of battle outside, energy weapons firing, metal tearing, voices shouting in languages she didn't recognize. "I think someone's attacking the ship," she said. The whispers from the walls grew louder and more agitated. The cell's organic barriers began to pulse with angry red light, and Eleanor realized that the ship itself was some kind of living creature that was now in distress. Another massive impact shook the vessel, and this time the lights went out completely. In the darkness, Elena heard the sound of the cell door dissolving. "Elena," came a familiar voice from the corridor outside. "Elena, where are you?" Elena's heart nearly stopped. Zephyr, I'm here." A bright light appeared in the doorway, and General Zephyr stepped into the cell wearing combat armor that glowed with energy. Behind him were several Alterian soldiers, their weapons ready. Eleanor ran to him without thinking, and he caught her in his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I thought I had lost you forever," he whispered against her hair. "I tried to contact you," Elena said, tears streaming down her face. "I never wanted to leave. They forced me to go and told you I had requested it." "I know," Zephyr said gently. "I received your message during the battle. It broke me out of the emotional fog I had been trapped in. I realized that Commander Kix had been manipulating both of us. What happened to him?" Zephyr's expression darkened. "When the Devourer attack began and our fleet started failing, I demanded to be released so I could restore the psychic network. Kix refused, insisting that his way of fighting was better. It wasn't until half our ships had been destroyed that my loyal officers realized the truth and freed me." Elena looked at the other humans in the cell. "We need to get everyone out of here." "Already being handled," Zephyr assured her. "My team is evacuating all the prisoners." "But Elena, there's something you need to know. When we touch like this, something extraordinary happens." Elena had felt it too. The moment Zephyr had taken her in his arms, she had felt a surge of energy unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was as if their bond had suddenly become visible, creating waves of power that rippled outward from their connection. "The Devourer ships," Zephyr explained as they hurried through the corridor toward the evacuation point. "Their technology relies on fear and isolation. They feed on negative emotions and use them to power their weapons. But our bond creates the opposite effect." "What do you mean?" "When we're together, our connection generates a field of positive energy that disrupts their systems. The closer we are, the stronger the effect. when I held you just now. This entire ship lost power for several minutes. Elena stared at him in amazement. So our relationship isn't just personal. It's actually a weapon against them. More than a weapon. It's hope itself made manifest. The Devourers cannot understand or fight against the kind of connection we share. They reached the evacuation point where an Alterian rescue ship was waiting. As Elena and the other human prisoners were helped aboard, she could see the battle raging outside through the ship's windows. Devourer vessels and Alterian ships were locked in combat above Earth's atmosphere, energy beams cutting through space like deadly fireworks. How bad is it? Elena asked as they settled into their seats. We've lost nearly 60% of our fleet, Zephyr admitted. Earth's defenses have been completely overwhelmed. The Devourers have begun landing ground forces on the major continents. Elena felt sick. How many people have died? Too many. But Elena, there's still hope. When our bond activated fully during the rescue, it didn't just affect one ship. The energy waves spread throughout the entire Devourer fleet in this sector. Several of their vessels went dead in space. Elena looked at their joined hands and saw a faint glow surrounding them. If we can amplify this effect somehow, maybe we can turn the tide of the battle. That's exactly what I was thinking. But Elena, using our bond as a weapon will require complete trust between us. No doubts, no fears, no holding back after everything that has happened after the separation. And the manipulation. Can you trust me that completely? Elena looked into Zephyr's eyes and saw not just the alien general who had vowed to protect her, but the person who had become the other half of her soul. Despite everything that had tried to tear them apart, despite all the people who had tried to convince them that their connection was wrong or dangerous, she knew with absolute certainty that she belonged with him. Yes, she said simply, I trust you with everything I am. Zephyr smiled, and Elena saw tears in his alien eyes. Then let's save our worlds. The process of fully activating their bond was unlike anything Elena could have imagined. Back on Zephyr's command ship, they were taken to a special chamber designed for psychic connections. As they sat facing each other with their hands joined, Elena could feel her consciousness expanding beyond her individual awareness. She could sense Zephyr's thoughts and emotions as clearly as her own. She felt his memories of losing his homeworld, his fear of failing the survivors who looked to him for leadership, his desperate love for her that had grown stronger every day despite their forced separation. In return, she shared her own feelings with him, her amazement at meeting life from another world, her growing feelings for him that had begun as professional respect and bloomed into something deeper than she had ever thought possible, her determination to help both their species find a way to coexist and thrive. As their minds merged more completely, Elena felt their combined consciousness reaching outward. She could sense the other Alterian ships in the fleet, their crews suddenly feeling hope and coordination returning as the psychic network stabilized. She could feel human survivors on Earth, frightened but not broken, still fighting to defend their world, and she could feel the Devourers, creatures of hunger and emptiness, who had never encountered anything like the bond she shared with Zephyr. Their ships began to malfunction as waves of positive energy washed over them, disrupting systems that relied on fear and isolation to function. It's working, Zephyr said, though Elena realized she was hearing his voice both aloud and directly in her mind. But Elena, the strain is enormous. I don't know how long we can maintain this. Elena could feel it too. The energy flowing through their connection was incredible, but it was taking a physical toll on both of them. Her head was pounding, and she could see that Zephyr was struggling as well. We don't need to maintain it long, Elena realized. We just need to hold it until other humans and Alterians can learn to form their own connections. That was the key. Insight that changed everything. As their bond radiated outward, it began awakening similar connections between other humans and Alterians who had worked closely together. Elena could sense Dr. Rodriguez, a human engineer, suddenly feeling a deep connection with the Alterian technician she had been collaborating with for months. She felt Commander Torres, one of Zephyr's loyal officers, forming a bond with the human military advisor who had been helping coordinate Earth's defenses. One by one, pairs and small groups of humans and Alterians began experiencing their own versions of the bond. Elena shared with Zephyr. Each new connection added to the network of positive energy that was spreading across both fleets. And down to Earth's surface, the effect on the Devourer forces was devastating. Ships that had been winning the battle suddenly found their weapons failing, their navigation systems offline, their ability to coordinate attacks completely disrupted. The creatures that had destroyed entire worlds through fear and consumption had never faced an enemy that fought with love and connection. Within hours, the Devourer fleet began retreating. The survivors fled into hyperspace, abandoning their attack on Earth and the Alterian refugees. The victory came at a cost, though. Elena collapsed from exhaustion shortly after the enemy retreat, and Zephyr wasn't much better. The strain of maintaining the psychic network during combat had pushed both of them beyond their physical limits. Elena woke up 3 days later in a medical facility that had been designed to accommodate both human and Alterian patients. Zephyr was in the bed next to hers, still unconscious but stable according to the doctors. "You did it," said a familiar voice. Elena turned to see Dr. Harrison sitting in a chair beside her bed. "You and General Zephyr saved both our species." "Dr. Harrison? What are you doing here?" "Apologizing," he said simply. "I was part of the group that arranged your transfer to Antarctica. We thought we were protecting the negotiations, but we nearly doomed both our worlds instead." "I'm sorry, Elena. You were right about your connection with General Zephyr. It wasn't a liability, it was the key to our survival." Elena looked over at Zephyr, who was beginning to stir. "What happens now?" "Now we rebuild," Dr. Harrison said. "The bond network you created has connected hundreds of humans and Alterians. We're learning to work together in ways we never thought possible. The first integrated colonies are already being planned." Zephyr opened his eyes and immediately looked at